I want to welcome everyone. We have some board members coming in. Sorry we had so much going on that we're a little bit late, and I apologize for that. I do want to say we will go back into executive session for one of the items, which is G, legal advice regarding the Town Chapin Memorandum of Understanding. So that will be handled, but we're going to go back because we do not want to make you wait any longer. We're glad you're here. We appreciate the hard work everybody's been doing in our staff and all our schools for the opening of school. And today was my first day. No kids yet where I teach at Northside Middle till next Monday, but we're getting ready. So I know all the work you guys are doing in every school and this district office. So we're excited for a new year coming up. At this time, I would like to have Ms. Huddle. She'll have our invocation.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for all your blessings as we approach the start of a new school year. Thank you for the blessing of our hardworking teachers and staff committed to the growth of our students. Thank you for district leadership who so ably support our teachers, students, and staff. Thank you for students who are ready and eager to learn. And thank you for parents and loved ones that support our students and our schools. Please continue to bless our students and staff and keep them safe. And please be with us every day of this new school year as we love and grow our students. Amen.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Huddle. We appreciate that. And now it's time for the superintendent's report, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and our community. We are so excited. We begin welcoming 1,432 teachers and a lot of staff, 1,200 staff to our school this year as we begin, ready for a week from today to welcome 17,286 students. So we're really excited. A lot to celebrate. We will have, just for the communities, a kickoff rally. It'll be at Irmo High School, 9:30 on Friday, this Friday the 12th. So we're looking forward to that. Very special recognition plan. I don't know if you've been watching ESPN2. We've had students representing our community, Irmo softball play. So we're really excited about their accomplishments. Before we begin, I'd like to go over the May financials, the period ending in May 31st, 2022. So I'm going to ask Ms. Connie Frick if you come forward for that.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Ross. Let's see, we have the general fund revenue pages up for everybody to see. As you can see, the monthly revenues of local sources through the end of May, 96.36% of the local revenues have been received, and 90.62% of the state revenues have been received. This puts us right on target since we have one more month of revenues to receive for the fiscal year. Revenues received through May 31st in 2021 and also in 2022 are very close. Both are over 92%. So we'll look at the expenditures. As you can see, the expenditures are a little bit ahead of last year's because of salary and fringe. The teachers did not receive their step last year until June 15th, 2021. Also, bonuses for this year were a little bit higher than last year. So that's all we have for today.
All right. We want to move to Esser.
this is ESSER 1, the CARES Act, and we have we budgeted, we've spent, and spent all of that by June 30th of 2021. ESSER 2, we are receiving $6.6 million. We've committed $1.3 million. We've actually expended $3.26 million, and remaining is $2,032,619. That is all that is as of June 30th of this year. ESSER 3, we received over $15 million. We've committed $2.8 million. The expenditures so far are $3.8 million, and the remaining to be spent is $8,308,019. Are there any questions about that?
The ESSER 3 funds, those have to be spent by September the 30th, 2023?
I think it's 24.
24?
Mhm.
Okay. So we on target, Dr. Ross, with that?
I believe that we are on target. We've got some big projects going on, and I think we're on target.
If we look at expenditure rate by the distance or I guess the life of ESSER, we kind of
Yes.
estimate we're about between 50 to 53% through the funds, as we're about 52% through the time. So we're tracking right on pace with that.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed the mental health portion on ESSER, was it ESSER 1 or ESSER 2?
2 and 3.
2 and 3. Okay, so we have a good bit of funds left on that, right? To spend.
And that would carry us out throughout the next 2 years. I think if we look at the clinical counselors that we've hired through the ESSER, so we want to make sure that we have those for the next years of that. We actually talked about sustainability of that. That's something that we are going to have to look at on how do we sustain that personnel, because that personnel has been key to the work that we're doing. You have approved for one mental health coordinator. I think that's going to do well in kind of reducing that, but that's something that we have to look to the future.
Yes.
Why, can you explain the difference in why one is listed in the ESSER Funds 2 category and one is listed in the ESSER 3? Is it just the different, like, I know that when it comes to ESSER funds, they categorize them as to kind of how you're able to break that up and spend it. Are these two different programs, or is this the same program being funded by, does that make sense?
Two different versions of the
Two
funding
different-
sources. Yeah,
yeah.
correct. So each version came out with more flexibility, more leverage. I think if you look at the CARES Act, ESSER 1, the number of pots, I think we're at like, I don't want to lie, I think about 12 or 14 pots, and then those would expand as we get to ESSER 3. And so our goal is, as we're committing some ESSER 3, making sure that we exhaust ESSER 2. So we've allowed the administration to have some flexibility on how they drew down those funds.
Ms. Huddle?
What is the deadline on ESSER 2?
Deadline on ESSER 2 is, I had that,
I think it's September 23.
23.
Any questions for Dr. Ross? Dr. Ross, I had one more. The mental health, are they, like you said, we've got a coordinator. Does that person travel to each of the schools?
Dr. Harris?
Or do we have one at certain? I just like to see how much coverage we have.
There are 9 clinical counselors,
Okay.
3 of which are in the 3 geographical areas of the district. And they, between the 9 counselors, they are addressing all of the schools throughout the district. The coordinator of mental health obviously is working on the scheduling, the leadership of that particular team. And they are, in fact, addressing crisis situations as well. But in terms of hands-on day-to-day, the clinical counselors are the initial points of contact.
So they're scheduled for different schools?
Yes,
On different
that
days?
is correct.
But if there was an emergency or a problem and one's not at that school, we would have the ability to get that person to that school?
Just like in any other crisis,
Right.
absolutely, there will be an all hands on deck kind of scenario. If there's a crisis at an individual school, we'll stop what we're doing to address that need, absolutely.
And then, Dr. Ross, I think you were alluding to that, when the ESSER funds are no more, we would have to fund that out of our tax dollar, but we want to, I just can't stress enough about mental health, and I know you've got another presentation where you've got the, what's the name of the? Yes, but it's just, to me, it's so much. So I hope this can give us an evaluation, Dr. Harris, of how well this is working that we spent this money on, so that the board at a later date can see, what we got. Did we get the right bang for the buck, and do we need to do more, or does it work where we have somebody travel around? I just want to see that all our students have access.
And if I can simply respond, I think the key portion of all of that is that, yes, all of our students do have access, and they do have someone available to them. While it may not be housed in a school,
Right.
the access is there. And I think that's perhaps the most critical point of all of that. And yes, this is an opportunity to continue to evaluate and to reevaluate the validity of and the need for, and I'll even say the growing need for mental health support in our schools. So it is an opportunity to evaluate that on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. I think that's so important for parents to hear that.
I have one other question. Dr. Ross, later on in the information agenda for tonight's meeting, it talks about care solace.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay, are those funds in any way used in conjunction with ESSER, or is that a different?
Yes, sir, Mr. Lovelace, we are utilizing the ESSER funds in order to support that initiative, and that is going to be an outlet, a huge outlet for our clinical staff and social work staff, psychologists and others, in making certain that students and their families are getting the necessary services outside of the school that they need in order to partner with our professional staff while in school. But it is utilizing ESSER funds to support that initiative.
So I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
So a couple of the meetings before this, we the board asked the district to look into mental health for students that was immediate after. I mean, this is further than the school district could go with professional help, and we asked that be, immediate. We were finding out that in some cases it was as long as 65 days or something between the time that the mental health person at the school district was able to actually get somebody in the professional help area out in the, not with the school district. Is this part of that?
That is exactly it.
Okay.
It assures us that support, the connection, and the referral source is done within a 72-hour period. So that is exactly what that does, as opposed to waiting 60, 90 days, and sometimes even longer.
Okay, that's very, very laudable. I really appreciate you doing that, because we could not afford to have people that have been, recognized as having a problem, and then we don't do anything for, it wasn't the school district, but I'm talking about that we can't connect somebody with them for 60 to 90
Right.
days. This is excellent. Thank you for
Right.
it so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, Dr. Ross, back to school update.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Connie. And also, giving a red shirt for today's meeting is our new CFO. We'd like to welcome her from the city of Rock Hill. Welcoming her to School District 5 election, Richland County, is our new CFO, Madison Paul. So.
Hey, Madison. We've heard great things about you from Dr. Ross, so we look forward to knowing you, and we look forward to you working in the district.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
She'll be doing the next monthly update for us. So, thank you so much, Madam Chair, members of the board, and the community. As always, I'd like to talk about just how we are organized as a district and this as a system, answering those three critical questions. Why do we do this work? How do we do this work? And what are the outcomes? When it comes to the question of why, it is our vision statement. We love and we grow our students. When it comes to the question of how, it is our mission statement. We represent this mission statement by the way we protect it, and that's the umbrella. This umbrella talks about everything from physical safety and physical health, our social needs, meeting mental health needs, as we just talked about, addressing behavioral issues and academic readiness issues so that we can get to that goal of increased educational outcomes. So I'd like to go over it's back to school time, and I know that there's a lot of excitement about coming back to school, but I know there's also, with ending a school year with the issues that we had at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, a lot of questions about security, safety and security for our students and our staff. As a reminder, I believe that the goal of protecting education, protecting our schools is everybody's responsibility. We think of one of the things that we can do is if we, making sure that all the doors are locked. If we see something that's out of order, being able to say something. I look at a multi-layered school security system as a way that making sure that we have backups to every part of our plan. That involves communication, compartmentalization, and awareness. And this comes from the philosophy of protecting an aircraft carrier. You want to protect it through the air, on sea, and underwater. If you look at, we talk about communications. We are able to contract with both Lexington and Richland County Sheriff's Departments. Right now we are, except for right now 5 elementary schools, fully staffed on SROs. So as of today at 5 o'clock, we were able to complete the protest period on a solicitation from a armed security firm, Security Solutions of America. This group is sworn, certified through SLED, security team that will be armed to cover those 5 elementary schools until the SRO is able to take over on that school. These schools will be on the elementary level. We looked at the incidences that we have in our middle schools and high schools. And in those particular cases, there are a lot of situations where the SRO has to do with student-to-student issues. In the elementary, our data says that it's more of protecting the campus, and so that's why the decision was to shift the SROs to the middle and high schools, but we will have them on day one. We actually have an extra one, so we'll have 6 of these security task force on our campuses, and 1 as a rover. In the event that any SRO is out, this group is able to come in. Again, they're armed. They're able to detain, and they work closely with our SROs if arrests are needed. So we're excited about having that. We have our safety team, and we have 1 for each geographical area, working with Dr. Harris, working in concert with SLED. I have been very pleased with our consultation this year. We brought in, whether it was you all at the USC or with the Law Enforcement and Safety Division there, working with Chief Keel and SLED and his threat behavior group, bringing in the special agent from the FBI. We have consulted with a lot of people about upgrading our safety and security measures. Number 1 of that is that Stop It app, when it's almost like radar. So we encourage families and students to download the Stop It app. It's an anonymous way to report things. If you look according to the Secret Services report, on almost 99% of the cases that we see, if there was ever an active shooter situation, information was known before the incident. Somebody knew something this is a way that you can secure it. And so what we will do with that information is turn it over to our nationally accredited threat assessment team. These are threat assessment takes all of these claims and they run them through a threat assessment to determine how we need to monitor or interact. The second piece is how we protect the physical plant through compartmentalization. That's screening, cameras, and eventually want to move to door sensors in addition to our security personnel. If you think about your house, how many exterior doors do you have? How many windows do you have? Well, in mine, when you open one, it chimes. When you have, if you're an SRO and you're covering 151,000 square feet, all of those doors, it's not chiming when they open. So we want to increase their ability, increase their effectiveness through the door sensor technology, as well as our camera system. But our biggest thing is awareness, being able to, again, use these threat assessment teams. Chief Keel has, as he does with every school district, made the SLED behavioral unit available to us. But as you all have known, once you've identified someone that needs help, how do you get them treatment? And that's through mental health and mental illness treatment. So it's these three pieces of communication, compartmentalization, and awareness. And whatever plan you make for safety, you have to keep iterating on it. The power's in the pivot. Someone's always trying to defeat your system. And so we have to, we're constantly looking at ways in which to improve and upgrade. So our plan on the first day of school will adjust on the second day of school. And we will keep adjusting to ensure that every student and staff is safe when they come to school. As you came in today, you've come through our open gate, and hopefully you see how it works. We're excited about that. We have one for every school. The notion is that when you enter as a visitor and you have access to our students, you will go through the open gate screening devices. Those screening devices, you don't have to take your cell phone out your pocket or your purse. As you see here, we have our board chair going through. It shows green, and so this technology allows us to determine if you have a weapon on without on your person without removing everything from the bag. So this open gate, we did testing. Dr. Harris's training Thursday for all of the administrators. It is our goal to secure, to eventually that the staff will be able to operate this. We are working to secure security personnel for the beginning of the school to assist with that. But this is another level of screening that we have and protection to make sure. And the question has been asked, are we starting with students on day one? The answer is no. We are starting with any visitor who wants access to the building. So I know dropping off elementary school students on the first day is big. So I'll put out a video. We're filming our video tomorrow showing the community how it works, what to expect. And that video will go out before the end of the week. But parents just will be informed that they will, if they're going into the building, access to other students, that they will pass through the open gate metal detection or weapons detection system. So again, it allows for ease of use. You've seen it in action. And if there is an issue, that the person will not be admitted until they're able to clear this screening. So those are issues that we're looking at in terms of safety and security. In terms of health, we will still operate our COVID-19 dashboard, but there are some differences from last year. One is when we look at school level data, there won't be any community spread data in the dashboard, so it'll just be school. All schools will open up on green. So all schools will open up green this year. There will be no contact tracing or quarantining. So the dashboard will only show new cases and isolations for every school. Again, if you come in the front, you may have seen, as we see it here, the UV light. This is the net zero UV light air purification device. They will be in all of the health rooms, and they will be in all of the front offices. So they've been installed. These, Mr. Wiseman, replace the air ever so often, and
It tends to about once, I want to say cycles about every 30 minutes, it cycles, depending on the size of the roof itself, and it cycles it, it kills the germs through the air. As you know,
maybe we use the mic there.
I thought I was just talking to you, sir.
No, you gotta talk to
There's other
everybody.
people here, I apologize.
That's all right.
It cycles, depending on the size of the room, it cycles about every 30 minutes. Again, the smaller room, it cycles like in the nurse's room. The bigger rooms like this, they'll take about 30 minutes to cycle through. But it kills 99.9% of the germs.
So again, we're excited about it briefly. We put it around the ventilation system to help with the circulation of that. So if you see those in the front office, that's what they're for. Again, that's in not only COVID-19, but flu season as well. We feel like we can get a lot of impact for that. So thanks to operations for getting that upfitted for us this summer. In the areas of mental health, we're dealing with, as we reported last year, we were averaging 1,131 crisis incidences per month. A huge overwhelming to our social emotional health, our school counselors. If you think about a school counselor, that's 106 counseling sessions per month. They're running through a lot, and our students are going through a lot. Our staff are going through a lot. And it was taking, on a low end, a very conservative estimate, 40 actions per student personnel to as high as 60 actions in order to get a child an appointment. And that's just following up and healthcare information and getting schedules. That's a lot of time for our staff to not make sure that child is got and any drop in any one of those actions, an email, a call, then we've missed that child getting to bed. So if we're going to be doing the identification, doing the screenings, being able to have the threat assessments, we want to make sure that the child is able to get treatment. And therefore, we have, again, contracted with Care Solace. Care Solace is actually, we've seen it work in Lexington 1, and that's why we are trying this out through our ESSER. We make one referral, and they make the calls, and so it shortens down those referral times from months to days. So we're really, again, excited about that. And that's just some highlights from our Whole Child Continuum. There'll be more in the parent newsletter to include the NEST, and we have now a school counseling coordinator or specialist, so we're excited about that. But how we finance our continuum is important as well. And as you may have heard, some districts were able to give $2,000 raises or $4,000 raises. And what you see is two lines. The top line is our expenses, which by law represents our income. We have a zero-based budget. And then the orange line, the bottom line, represents the District 5, how much our expenditures for salaries and fringe. So we saw an increase of 3.67% over our entire general fund budget. We gave raises, which was in salaries, about 3.3 or 3.6%, 3.3%. But we had a 9.3% increase in benefits. And so between the blue line and the orange line that's the space in which we operate our district. We have made cuts in supplies. We've made cuts in contractual services so that we can give our faculty and staff raises. We did not do raises for administrators. We wanted to put as much as we received and that increase to go to salaries and benefits for our employees. The system ends with outcomes, and I wanted to outline what our system outcomes are, that we love and we grow all students. And so if you look, you will see the superintendent's goals as represented in the strategic plan. So under love, it's school climate and the 6 strategies there. And in teacher administrator quality and the 6 strategies we have there. Under grow will represent the student achievement and the 6 strategies we have under student achievement and the 8 strategies we have under gifted and talented. So we're going to face challenges with this. Mental health is a big challenge, as we talked about, and its impact on performance. Poverty's impact on proficiency. This is something that's happening nationally. We're going to talk about facility quality and school capacity and the different options and phases that were provided there. But one of the things I think we're really struggling with that doesn't show up on any strategic plan is these ever-present challenges. Now, this is going to what bogs down the educator right now, and it's I think it's the drama and trauma that surrounds teaching and learning, and trying to reclaim that. If you turn to social media, it just seems like that's everything that you see around schools. And as we try to recruit teachers and we try to recruit administrators and staff, it's hard to get them to work for schools because of just what they are bombarded with every day. When you look at how social media works, whatever you click on, that's what it feeds you more of. And it just feeds and feeds and feeds. And we wonder why our students are dealing with the mental health issues. They don't see adults work out problems very well. They don't have a model on how adults work out problems. It is this constant bombardment that, again, we have to do something to fight back against. And so one of the things that I think we can do is just be proactive in telling our story. In fact, that's our theme this year, is telling our story. So we are asking the board to approve an amendment to the general fund, the budget, for Good News Ambassadors. We will take a FTE control code and repurpose that in that will be repurposed in the supplement schedule. And the goal is for us to provide $1,500 supplements to staff or teachers that will be selected for each school and program to tell their story, to tell what's going on positive, remind our teachers their purpose, remind our educators why they got into it, because few are standing up for them. So we want to make sure that we can highlight that, we can address that, we can highlight some of the great work that's going on under our D5 story, hashtag D5 Heart Work. So again, that will take a approval from this board, but with that is our back to school message as we commit to love and grow our students.
Madam Chair, could I make a motion at this point?
Well, I'd like to first, I didn't have my mic on. I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to first have any questions from what he just presented, because I had some, and okay, Miss, and then we'll take motion.
I have a lot of questions, and they're on
Well,
different subjects.
right.
So I don't know,
I
do
tell
you
you what,
want to
let's
start
do.
down the list and go?
Yeah, I tell you what, let's do. Let's do one, and then let everybody, and it may be that only
Okay.
2 of us have questions, so we'll come
Okay.
back to you. Is that okay?
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
thank you.
I have questions relating to some of the security concerns that we talked about. I know that you've provided some answers to the board. We've asked some questions. And one of the things that I think we can all say is that we've gotten several questions from concerned parents, especially from elementary schools. So I had some questions that I was hoping that you might be able to put out there and ease some concerns regarding the SROs and the security guards that are coming in and the security systems. There's a name in it.
Open gates.
Open gates, yes. Okay, so my questions regarding the security guards, one of the questions that I've gotten, and I believe I sent you an email about this, was regarding the solicitation process for that. That wasn't a board vote. That was put out for bid, and then you received responses, and then that was announced tonight. Can you kind of talk about that process a little bit?
Yeah, so under the procurement code, we will do a solicitation for And it's one of the, forgive me, I think it's exemption 5 or 7, I don't know, but for SRO services. So that lets us to, if we need to move fast for security, we don't have to call a board vote. So it is exempt under the procurement code, and it does not require a board vote. We did the solicitation. Dr. Harris, can you kind of walk us through that process of getting them in from there?
Absolutely. We did the solicitation. We were able to craft it in terms of what we needed in order to make certain that we're serving the schools in a like manner that any school resource officer would. And once that was crafted, we were able to follow the process a bit. And to the end, and to what Dr. Ross shared earlier, the protest period ended today. And so we're in a position to have those 6 persons in this case ready. Contact, we're looking forward to making contact tomorrow so that we can have opportunity to talk more in specifics regarding expectations and all the specifics and details. But they're ready for first day of school. And so it followed the process as outlined, and we're ready to move forward at this point.
Okay, and then with those security guards that are coming into the elementary schools, they have been certified and licensed through SLED. They will be armed. My question relating to that is, like an SRO, will they have specialized training for dealing with students? And will we have consistency with one armed guard at one school, pending being sick or something like that? They will be assigned to one school consistently to develop relationships with families and teachers and students.
Right, so I'll start with the latter portion first. Yes, that is exactly what we wanted to do, is to have that level of consistency, just like we would do with any other resource officer. So these armed persons will be assigned a single school, and they will work that particular school throughout the day, every day, and for the duration that they're here. And again, I say that predicated on law enforcement, in this particular case, the respective county, being able to provide us with a school resource officer as we had in prior years. Part of the reason that we are looking forward to making contact tomorrow is to ensure that in terms of the operational procedures and contact with students and those staff or visitors or others, is that we are very clear on that. And that's where we set those expectations. We're meeting with our safety team and others to assist in that process. And so that is, in fact, we're scheduled to do that Wednesday morning for that very reason, to ensure that prior to the start of school, we've answered as many questions as we possibly can, and that we have set the stage for what is expected for these armed security persons. Come highly recommended from other districts across the state, and so we feel good about the position that we're in and the current state of where we are now, and making certain that all of our schools have someone there available, as opposed to the alternative of not having the support that we would certainly look forward to having.
And they have arresting, or not a detaining power, correct?
That is correct. They have arrest and detaining power, but they're going to work in concert with the respective law enforcement agency. So if in fact there is a case wherein a person needs to be arrested, if you will, then that will be, an arrest will officially be made by the law enforcement agency and not the security organization at this time.
Speaking of that authority for detention, when it comes to the open gates, who has the authority to search and screen individuals that are entering school? So like the first week of school when you have parents going into schools, or generally speaking, who has that authority?
So right now, any search that would happen would have to come through either the SRO or the security personnel to do that. Right now, it's not admitting you into the building. We're working on a contractor a security contractor to do all of that for the staff. We have to be, but we can't do that forever. So the goal is to get the staff trained for the first 30 days of school and then roll it over to staff. And so that's the goal for now.
Okay, and I'll come back, Ms. Hunt. Mr. Hogan, I'm just going to go down if anybody's got a question on this. Mr. Hogan, she covers yours? Okay. Ms. Gardner? Mr. Lovelace?
Yes. one of the things that one of the teachers asked me over the summer here was they heard about the open gates. And while they were supportive of it, they were very worried that, that classroom teachers that were working the car line would be asked to operate open gates. And I just, wanted to, make sure that we
They
get.
don't want another job.
Yeah, they don't want another job, and especially one that technical. So after what we saw, and Ms. Hammond's yellow pocketbook set off the
Yeah, I meant
the
to say,
alarm. I'm here to tell you when we were down at USC. But anyway,
I don't know what was in it, but I said,
anyway, so I know that there are various magnitudes of intensity that this machine has, but I just wanted you to assure all the classroom teachers that they would not be asked
Our
to
plan-
operate this.
Right, our plan was not for this to be a duty station. What we do want, though, is to assure families that we had some kind of screening before you come in. The first day of school, and I hate kind of sharing what our vulnerabilities are publicly, but everyone wants to come in and walk their children to class. In this day and age, we need screening, and so we will be set up so that you can walk through, and we can make sure that's that nothing that shouldn't be in that building is in there. And so we tried to find a device that was as user friendly, but and did not seem intrusive. So we're not wanding anyone. We're not asking staff to wand. If it's red, you can't get in the building. And you can remove whatever you can from your pockets, take it back to the car, but you won't get in the building if it goes red. So we're not stopping, we're not searching. You just won't get access to our buildings at that point.
good. Ms. Huff.
One question, and I think I understand this, but I just want to make sure I'm right about this. The issue, the reason we need the private security is because Richland County has provided the deputies that we need to cover the Richland County schools. Lexington right now is unable to do that. So that's why we're having to do this. Not that we didn't want them, we want them, but that Lexington County was unable to provide them. And so when they are, if they're able to provide one, we'll go down one, correct?
Correct. We will keep our 6 with this contract, and they'll be able to give us more flexibility and coverage. But as one rolls in, that school will be covered.
Is that good? Ms. Moore?
Don't forget about me down
I'm
here.
not going to forget you.
No. Going back to the staff, I know that you just said that this will not be a duty spot for any teachers, but I do have questions and concerns when it comes to kids, especially at the high school, who come back and forth during the day from the Kate Center. I have been witness to the influx of students that happen, and so how will that be? I mean, I know that you don't have all the answers right now, but do we have an idea of who the staff will be, who's manning that? Because I would just imagine that was a lot for those attendants and front desk.
That's a great question. So ID personnel, so students and staff, and we're putting a huge emphasis on IDs this year, huge emphasis. Deputy Cato here made that very clear to our administrators of how important that is. They are not, that is the first, yes, but they're not being screened at this time. We're not screening students. If there's a reasonable suspicion that a student is in possession of a weapon, then we have that device there. So when the back and flow of students moving forth, that won't be, and that's going to take a lot more personnel. Right now, the single point of entry for people who are not supposed to be in that building, these are all visitors. And on the first day, we have a huge influx, especially on the elementary school level, of visitors entering the building. Again, 15, 30 years ago, it wasn't a problem. Everybody came in our buildings and they left, no incident. Now it requires an additional level of screening. And so that's a great clarification, but we won't be manned to screen every student on day one.
Okay. That good, Ms. Moore? You want to have another one? Okay.
Different subject. Just some clarification on the Goodwill ambassadors and the $1,500 stipend that needs a board vote. So I just want to make sure that I understand where the $1,500 is coming from and how many Goodwill ambassadors there'll be and when that is applied. So you said that each week, there'll be 2 Goodwill ambassador stories that will be selected to be published on social media?
Great question. So the clarification to that, and Ms. Taylor can speak to some of the details here, but each school is given a new, we take the control code, which for this FTE, I think it's about $66,000. Of that, we break that up into $1,500 increments, so we'll have money left over. Every school and program, I think we're even doing departments, food services, transportation, they can hire 1 staff member who gets an additional supplement. And they can post as many times as they want, but at least twice they will post a positive story. It doesn't even have to be celebrations. It's more on the vision of what we're doing to love and grow students in their work. And then that will be coming through our district social media. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So each school and program, like Dr. Ross said, would post at least twice on their own page. So each school's page or each program's page. And then we will have someone on staff here at the district office too that would share some of those posts through the district social media as well.
So each school will get one $1,500 FTE stipend for 1 employee for a year or for a semester?
Yes, so by our policy, every supplement is a yearly
Okay.
piece. So at the end of the year, the principal can select who gets that for the next year.
And how will they determine who is selected? Is there like an application process for staff?
So we created just like with all of our supplements, you have your, once it's approved, you have your job description, you have your internal post, because it's just an internal post. The principal can select that. It doesn't need administrative approval other than sending up the employment form, yes.
Did you say how you choose?
The principal chooses.
Is it
Yes.
principal?
A principal or director of the program will choose them.
So the principal from each school would be, all right. And anybody else? I'll go back down. Did you get everything, Ms. Hines? Ms. Gardner?
Just on that vein, how are we funding it? What would it be coming out of?
So we saw some reductions in the 5 program, especially in the elementary numbers. We took a control code from the 5 program and rolled that into the Good News Ambassadors.
All right, and you need a motion for that?
We would need approval because it's not on the supplement scale that you passed on June 27th. And so this would be an amendment, taking that control code and moving it to the supplement schedule.
Well, Ms. Dr. Ross, to her question, since it's not here on action, we can put it under with employment? Would you count it? Can you count it there?
Yes.
I see Ms. Mahoney's back there. I think that we can do that because that would be a stipend, just like out of, okay. I just want to be sure since it wasn't listed on the action, but it can come under our A and B. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that? I think it's a great idea. I think teachers will enjoy that. I did have one question on the, and I was waiting till the end. I know the answer to this, but I would like parents to hear it. And every teacher I know out there that's here or listening, it's very important that we have a protocol within our classrooms about our doors being locked. And I just want parents to know, you covered it well about it should just be the one entrance where, and then if any other doors are opened, you'll have that alarm that goes off. But I do think it's very important to say what our teachers are expected to do about their own rooms. So I'd just like you to say how you, maybe that's in service, maybe you have principals that check that, because I can just say as a teacher myself, it's very easy. We, in Lex 2, we keep the doors locked to our room, and there are a lot of kids that get up and go to the restroom. They come in and out, but you have, you have to get somebody to open the door, and it's very easy very easy for a teacher to just say, oh, gosh, just let's just leave it unlocked for right now so that we don't keep getting up and down. I just think it's important that we don't do that, and how often do we check that from your staff down? And I mean that in a very good way. No teacher would do that like on purpose to not check it, but it's so easily as you implement something. I want parents to know we're going to push as a district, as a board for safety, and we want to know that maybe is gone over at every faculty meeting. Remember to do that.
No, it's a good point. I was want to thank Dr. Harris and his team. Our school's gone through the ALICE training, and they have. We also had our administrators, Captain Sheriff Lott provided us training. Captain Pagoni, I forget his last name,
We had that.
to come in, and one of the things that he shares is we learn lessons from each one of these incidences.
That's right.
And leaving doors open, just for a lunch delivery seems innocent until someone comes to do harm. Another thing, we're just learning schools are different now. The amount of incidences we're seeing, and so we're prepping for that. I think Deputy Cato alerted us when we do searches. That changed now. We don't search with our hands. We have to get chemo gloves because of the substances that we can run into, like fentanyl and things like that. So it's different, and so we are changing a lot of our protocols and constantly changing those to protect our students and staff. So you'll see some of these added measures this year.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. So you want to do your presentation of E?
Yeah,
before
we'll
we
go through
to-
E
Yeah.
here, and
And then we'll do approval.
and E is as we look at, we can pull it up here, our potential bond referendum to finance facilities improvements replacement. We recognize that the goal is to build a strong educational foundation for School District 5. The reality that I'm faced with addressing is that the students are moving out west, but the buildings are in the east. And how do we adjust that? We've seen in the last 10 years that we've seen Chapin go from 25% of the in-person population to 38% of the in-person population. We've seen our buildings in Irmo and Dutch Fork, we see them not getting the need, the upgrades, and the physical plant that we see in the west, out in Chapin. And what do we do about this? Our goal, according to board policy, is to achieve the greatest educational returns. And that is safety, that is security, that's an equitable learning environment so that we can focus on social, emotional growth and development. I provided our board with 4 options and 4 phases to consider the facility quality and school capacity that we have within our system. When we talk about facility quality, again, growth in the west, but the facilities are in the east. And you look at the quality of the facilities in the east, you can see that's where we house the majority of our poor and fair rated facilities. And as we look at student movement, again, this is the 135th day report. So we have 6 zone schools in Chapin, 7 in Dutch Fork, and 8 in Irmo. And at some point, when we fill up the Chapin schools, we have to come back to the Dutch Fork and Irmo area in order to fill those schools. But we want to make sure that as we fill these schools, we're filling them in schools that are brought up to at least good standard, if not excellent standard. And I believe that in order to accomplish our mission, to get the greatest educational returns, we should have buildings that allow students to do 3 things: learn to know, learn to do, and learn to be. And any great organization, especially with the education mind, has these 3 focuses. Spaces where students can learn to know information. That's that traditional lecture lab. Spaces where students can learn to do things. This is the discovery labs. The lecture classroom is where you know. The discovery classroom or the lab is where you do. And I think it's those spaces that we have, whether it's on the ball field or in the art room, where you learn how to be, learn who to be. If we talk about school capacity, I think it's very important that we look at how we outline a school occupancy threshold. I think it's very confusing, and so I think we have to look at if this is a typical classroom wing or a school wing with 10 classrooms. We target an 80% learning to know area and a 20% learning to do. 100% should be learning to be, but 80% lecture, 20% lab. And when you schedule a building, you want opportunities for lab space, science labs or discovery labs, or these will grow as time grows, as we learn more. It could be a nanotechnology lab, who knows? But you have those spaces and places for teachers to take those students to do things where they're learning to do new things. When you start to move towards 100% school occupancy rate, you lose those lab spaces. It becomes all learning to know. That's we move away from effectiveness and efficiency to just efficiency. And I'm a superintendent, but I'm a dad who's also superintendent. I want my child to have spaces where they have that discovery, where they have that lab. If we look at the reality, though, this is more the reality. It is misleading to take the number or the enrollment, 135th data, 180th data, 45th data, 10th day, and say to those, I'm going to divide that number by the number of classrooms, and that's how many classes we should have. Because not all students are the same, literally. They're not even weighted the same. So we have some classrooms that can only have 12 students in it based on the classification. For instance, ED students, by law, only putting 12 in there. And then we have our board policy of 21 in certain classes. But you have in Title I schools, you only put 18 in that class. So case in point, an example of this, if you take Irmo Elementary and Harbison West Elementary, those kindergarten classrooms, according to the 135th day report, both kindergartners had this, both schools had the same number of kindergartners. One had 73, one had 74. If you go by board policy at Irmo Elementary, they need 3 kindergarten teachers to cover those 74 students. You look at Harbison West, it's a Title I school, so they need 4. If you start looking at of those students that are Title I, if there are special education issues, that number would increase. You can almost, not in the elementary example, but in a 4th grade or 5th grade, you almost need 5. So for the same number of students, it increases based on the type of student we have. This changes the calculus in terms of how many labs and lecture space we can have. So for example, at a school like Harbison West, there's no science lab because of how we have to program the schools. So when we talk about school occupancy, you'll see numbers, but look deeper into the numbers and actually see the needs of the kids. And you see that these teachers and staff are trying to program the same opportunities of lecture and lab, learning to know and learning to do, so we can all learn to be great citizens that can contribute to our society. So as we look at these occupancy numbers and you see 93% at Lake Murray or 81% at Chapin Elementary School, know that these are schools that are losing that lab space, losing that learning to do, and we're turning almost every space there into a lecture lab. As we look at it on the secondary level, again, a goal is to be at 80% threshold, no more than 85, that we're losing those lecture labs. I worry about looking at school occupancy rates all the way up to 100%. I think that's just, it undermines the educational returns that we're trying to provide. So as we continue to shift the population out west, we're going to see diminished returns in terms of what we can provide in terms of the educational experience. It's efficiency, yet effectiveness. Our staff has gone out to the community multiple times, asked different advisory groups, what do you think? What do you want for your schools? And consistently, it has been our option 3, phase 3. And that's what we have brought to this board today. We sit at our current phase, which is this model that we deliver instruction. We take in the east 10 elementary schools, and we move them to 1 intermediate school for 1 year, and then back out to 2 middle schools, all in a space where the facilities are not in the quality that we have out in the west. Our goal in the conversation with them was to use our borrowing power through 3 series of bond referendums, I'm sorry, 1 bond referendum, but 3 series of borrowings to change our district to this format, which will allow Spring Hill to operate without the Academy for Success, will allow a early childhood center at the Harbison West site, would turn the current Dutch Fork Elementary School into our alternative academy school that would house adult ed as well as the 5 program. The center would stay as it is. In Chapin, we would move Ballantyne into the Chapin cluster. And Ballantyne and Lake Murray would feed into Chapin Middle School, which would be proposed to be called Spring Hill Middle School. Piney Woods and Chapin Elementary would go to Chapin Middle School, which is currently Chapin Intermediate School. The rest of the feeders would flow just as they do in Dutch Fork and in Irmo, with a larger Dutch Fork Middle and a larger Irmo Middle School due to the academy additions. We looked at how this would fund and the pricing structure for these projects. Again, this list has been modified after public input. The last addition has been the first 2 that you see here. These are all in priority order. The first thing would be the vestibules at I think we've identified 12 schools. And this is a way to help with the screening. So you don't just come into our buildings. You come into a vestibule, you're screened there before you can even get access to the staff. Right now, that's not the case. You can just come in and you're right there, access to them. Also would allow us to put in the door sensors. Again, we have SROs, but they'll tell you their job's not easy, and they're responsible. If anything happens, they're going to ask, where's the SRO? One person covering hundreds of thousands of square feet, we need to give them supports. And any technological supports that we can do would be tremendous. At Dutch Fork High School, we've talked about their upgrades, but I want to add a lab. I want to add that learning to do piece. STEM was huge 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Everybody has STEM now, so we really want to upgrade what they're currently doing with robotics with an advanced robotics lab. Again, the 6th grade academies at both Dutch Fork and Irmo Middle School will allow the crossroads function to be moved to those sites. And so 6th grade Irmo students would be at Irmo Middle School. 6th grade Dutch Fork students would be at Dutch Fork Middle. A new Dutch Fork would allow us to, we'll give an update on what we're doing at Dutch Fork, but we're having issues there with that site as an elementary school. And so having, returning that to an alternative program would bring back the old Rosenwald Richlex building. Chapin High School would receive a fine arts building. Nursery Road would be remodeled so that we can put walls there. There are no walls at both Nursery Road and Harbison West. Harbison West would move into Crossroads, where they can expand its offerings. And if inflation has not eaten this project, we have a $7.8 million hedge in this project with 2 stadium upgrades, one at Irmo and one at Dutch Fork. And as you're aware, in November, after the football season, we will totally redo the Chapin High School stadium. And so this will bring parity to the other stadiums in the district to be in line with what we're going to do out in Chapin High School. This is the order of the projects. If the projects don't, the funds happen because of inflation or whatever, and we don't have money, we're going to do them in this order. But the last things to be done, if this moves forward, would be those stadiums, because that would, again, provide almost a $7.8 million hedge against any inflation, even though these represent inflationary impacts. If you go back to the beginning of this, the walls at Nursery Road cost $8 million, with inflation at 21. So we see what inflation has done. We want to thank, and I'm going to ask Mr. Jay Glover, who's came all the way up from Florida. He's a Gamecock, so he was able to visit campus and everything here to walk us over. I have here 3 series on how that bond would be issued, but if you can kind of go over our current financial situation, debt, and then how it would look in terms of if we pursued a bond and it passed.
Perfect. Thanks, Dr. Ross. Madam Chair, school board members, Jay Glover from PFM Financial Advisors. We are the district's financial advisor on debt-related matters and are here to discuss some of the impacts of passing this referendum, as well as also if this referendum does not move forward. But before doing that, I do want to mention when we're looking at debt, we're always looking at 2 levers in terms of what the district's bonding capacity are, and that's your 69.5 mil target limit, which you have some discretion over increasing or decreasing, but you also have a legal limit of 8% debt, which sits at $47 million. So regardless of how high or how low you want to levy debt service millage, you're restricted to only having $47 million of 8% debt outstanding at any given time, which is really the restricting factor when we look at most of your bonding alternatives. Before we start about the referendum, the graph here on the page shows your current outstanding debt going through 2032. If you recall, last year we issued about $47 million worth of 8% debt, which is the max amount, and that was to fund your annual $15 million maintenance program, as well as about $34 million of bond proceeds for the Irmo High School. So as we sit here today, which you can see on the table to the right, we actually have maxed out your 8% debt capacity today. So you have no capacity as we sit here today to issue additional 8% debt, and won't have that until we actually pay down some of that 8% debt. So when we move forward, you can see in 2023, there's a large spike in that graph. So we will pay down about $23 million worth of 8% debt in March of 2023. But that's already allocated for, again, your $15 $15 million that you do annually, as well as an additional $9 million for Irmo High School. And then again in 2024, we'll do the same thing. We'll issue $15 million and then another $7 million for Irmo. So that gets you to your $50 million Irmo High School project. So really until we get out past 2024, all of your 8% debt is spoken for, which you can see in the table to the right. And then in 2025, we start paying down that debt, and you get small amounts of 8% capacity over time, but really nothing to the extent that's going to allow you to fund significant capital projects, really until you get out probably 10 years or so from now, when you would have the ability to do additional debt. So you really are limited, not necessarily by your 69.5 mil target millage levy, but you are restricted by your $47 million 8% capacity. And that will grow slightly over time, but not to the extent needed, to fund the level of projects we're talking about today. So as we fast forward and look at the scenario we've talked about before, we're looking for a way to actually fund this $150 million worth of projects and do that within your 69.5 mil debt service limit. And the way to do that is depicted in the graph here. And I know there's a lot going on. It's hard to talk about this without getting into the weeds, so I apologize in advance, and we'll address any questions you all might have. But this pictorially shows how you would amortize all of your debt outstanding, including the $150 million proposed referendum debt. So again here, the gray bars are showing your existing debt as we sit here today. The yellow bars show your $50 million of Irmo High School debt being amortized over the next 10 years. And we structure that debt in this way to give yourselves flexibility to even consider a referendum, because if we would have accelerated that amortization period, you would not have the flexibility within your debt service millage to consider this level of debt. So that's why those yellow bars are extended out a little longer than normal. Again, the red bars show the $15 million worth of annual maintenance. So unless there's a policy change, the plan is each year to issue $15 million worth of 8% debt for your annual maintenance. And then the blue bars is where the referendum comes in. So what we're doing here is between 2033 and 2038 is when you would amortize that $150 million worth of referendum debt. And we're proposing to do that really in 3 series of debt over a 3-year period. That's preliminary. I think as we move forward with the process, assuming you all do want to move forward and there's a successful referendum, we would work with your staff on the exact timing of those expenditures to try to time out when we would actually issue the bonds, 1, to minimize interest cost, and 2, to make sure you have the funds available to spend on the projects as needed. But again here, you can see the principals being amortized from 2033 through 2038, and then the blue bars show the interest flowing forward on those. And that's really why we've had to structure your current debt as we have, to give you that flexibility to have that room to pay the interest in those early years. But again here, we can get this done, $150 million worth of referendum debt, and stay within your 69.5 mil limit. And we think we're being fairly conservative actually in our assumptions. We're assuming only around 1% annual growth and not assuming any reassessments. So there is some flexibility along the way for some unforeseen circumstances to potentially take on a little bit more debt, whether that's 8% debt as capacity frees up within that 69.5 mils. And you can also see there's some gap out when you get in the latter years. That's also capacity within your 69.5 mil limit. So again, this is the proposed structure and will allow you to do this without a tax increase above your target millage levy and pay off all of the debt within 2038. And I think with that, Dr. Ross, I was going to turn it back over to you, and I can address any questions at the conclusion of the presentation.
And so our statement, I thank you so much, Mr. Glover, is we have 2 realities here. Again, the movement of students is in the west, but the buildings are in the east. This is a plan to address them. We have tried to provide this at a referendum that would not require a tax increase. We would have the same debt service tax rate if it fails, if it was passed. So we're trying to do a lot for 150. We thought that this plan would allow us to bring that to a reality. And so thank you, Mr. Glover, for putting this to us and showing us how this would work. Because I know we hear bond referendum, we hear tax increase, but we wanted to show how this could work at the same tax rate for debt service. So with that, that concludes my presentation on the potential referendum to finance facilities improvements and replacement.
Thank you, Dr. Ross.